Peter Semmelhack, where are we right now when it comes to social machines? Is my refrigerator talking to someone I don't know about?
I don't think your refrigerator is, but we're very close to the idea of machines actually reaching out through social networks to talk to, social graphs. So if you think about like Nike and their Fuel Band, Jawbone makes this thing called the Up. Those are devices that are actually, posting information on your wall. They could be tweeting. They could be, interacting with not just you but your friends and others in interesting ways. Things like refrigerators and household appliances are on the way, and I think in the next couple of years you're going to see a lot of that.
And which companies are leading the way? You mentioned Nike, but
Yep.
Are you seeing, for example, Ford developing something with Facebook? Is that the end game?
It's the next step. I think, certainly there's a lot of companies working with Facebook. I think just a very few companies now are beginning to work with Facebook as it pertains to machines talking to Facebook, not just people. A good example, I think, is Amazon. So Amazon's Kindle, if you've used it, you can actually highlight the text in the book. You can say, I like this, and you can make comments. That's all shared amongst other Kindle users, and you can actually now take that information and post that to Facebook. So that's a machine. It's a little device that's actually talking to a community of other users, and that I think is a good example of what is happening. Nike also with their Fuel Band is doing the same thing.
How wary are the machine makers of this social interaction being just a fad? I know right now everyone's rushing. They want everyone to speak online to everyone else, whether it be on Google or whether it be on Facebook.
Yeah.
But right now you're hearing about people dropping off Facebook and moving on to the next thing, and,
Yeah.
and so I suppose that's going to happen with Twitter as well.
Well, I think you have to be careful, because when I say social, I don't mean Facebook per se. What I mean is a device that is communicating with its users, and a user could be a one-to-one or it could be a community in ways that are not normal today. So if you take a medical device today may just be communicating with you through a screen, but in the future, if it's online, it could be communicating with anyone else in your network. So let's say you're a diabetic or an asthmatic, you could be sharing information about your situation, and others could see it and participate in that network. So it may be Facebook, but it's more just this idea that the devices are going to participate in a social way, in a conversation.
So there is a utilitarian use for these machines going online and connecting with the outside world, as opposed to just letting your friends know that your sneakers told you that you ran 26 miles, right, and you want to share it with your friends.
Yeah, and it's more than just utilitarian. I think there's real business value, because if you now have a device, your version 1 is not connected, version 2 is connected, and you can now write applications for that device becomes more valuable, right? So anybody who's making a device, if you can make apps for it, that's a business value.
And then the information also becomes valuable, because when you have your refrigerator telling you how much you're eating, will that report back to, I don't know, the supermarket, and will they send me coupons to buy more eggs or a particular type of milk?
I mean, that's a possibility.
And is that scary as well, that your machines know a lot about you, and those could end up in telemarketing or web spam?
Yeah, well, I think everyone talks about refrigerators as an example of something which is always about to be huge. Like your refrigerator is going to somehow know what you need.
Well, it's the biggest appliance in my kitchen.
Yeah, and I think it will happen. I think, and it can, but I think there's lots of other low-hanging fruit that has to do with things like fitness, safety, energy efficiency, and so on. And you're starting to see things like Nest, the thermostat, which is a learning device and participates in networks. There's lots of interesting things are going to happen. And as I mentioned earlier, Facebook is part of it, but I feel like anybody who is an OEM or a product developer is starting to say, if I connect my thing to a network, does it become more valuable? And I think the answer always is yes. And that starts to become what I call a social interaction between not just two machines talking, but machines talking to their users and communities of users in interesting ways.
And then finally, and GE
Yep.
and IBM and all the major machine manufacturers and technology players are aware of this.
Yes.
They're already on this.
Yeah, in fact, GE calls it the industrial internet, Cisco calls it the internet of everything, IBM calls it whatever they want. But my feeling is big companies are going to have a play, but I think by far the most interesting things are going to come from the bottom up. You have lots of small companies doing lots of interesting things, because the internet of everything, or the internet of things, is a very fragmented space. And I think you're going to have lots of interesting things coming from those groups who are focusing on those areas.